Art 25 is self-funded. We don't sell our work, so it cannot be collected. The tangible material work that we make cannot overtly be collected by whoever has the money to buy it. We give our work to people in the community who want to steward it.
Hello and welcome to Art Restart, where we learn from artists who, wherever they work, whatever they make, are shaking up the status quo in their fields and in their communities. I'm Pier Carlo Talenti, the producer and editor of this podcast, which is brought to you by the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. In this episode, we'll meet the three members of the remarkable arts collective Art 25 Art in the 25th Century. They are poet Lehua Taitano, visual artist Lisa Jarrett, and multi-disciplinary artist Jocelyn Kapumealani Ng. Before founding Art 25, Lisa and Lehua were already longtime friends who met while earning their MFAs in different fields at the University of Montana. While there, they served as each other's sounding boards as they developed new projects. Lehua, who is CHamoru from Guam, and Lisa, who is Black, treasured each other's insights on common themes they were exploring, including diaspora, indigeneity, and Blackness. But the thought of actually co-creating a project didn't occur to them until Lehua received an invitation to make work in a culture lab at the Smithsonian Pacific American Center. She asked if she could collaborate with Lisa. The Smithsonian said sure, and the seed of what would become Art 25 was sown. That same lab is where Lehua and Lisa first met Jocelyn, who has Hawaiian, Chinese, Japanese, and Portuguese roots, and in her own work was exploring very similar themes as Lehua and Lisa. Jocelyn spoke to me from Honolulu, Lisa from Portland, Oregon, and Lehua from San Francisco. We pick up the conversation with Jocelyn explaining how she officially came on board Lehua and Lisa's experimental collaborative.
I met them in passing at the Culture Lab. Real brief introduction to one another. And it wasn't until about a year later where Lehua messaged me asking to hop on a call, inviting me to collaborate. And I think we were on the phone for maybe an hour and I was very gung-ho about it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds great. I love collaboration. I think my whole practice has always been in collaboration with others. And from the get-go, they just came to Hawaii and I think the rest is history. Everything just clicked. The vibe was right. And it was so easy. Everything, I can't emphasize enough, everything was just so easy.
How so?
From conversation to thinking about ideas, I was very transparent with them of where I was at with my own practice, where I was in my personal life. My grandmother had just passed away. I think one of the first conversations I had with them was like, hey, I understand like you guys are here, but this is where I'm at personally. And I haven't really been making art, but this is what I've been feeling. I don't know if this is what's calling me right now, but if we can incorporate this somehow, I think that's where I'm being moved to. And Lisa and Lehua were so open to everything.
So did you end up incorporating it?
Yeah. So when we collaborated for Future Ancestors, the transformation aspects of what I did on my own body with the scarring was an echo of the scarring on my grandmother's body when she was fighting cancer. So incorporating those aspects was really important and powerful to me.
Could you describe that project, Future Ancestors, and also talk about how, as a threesome, you were able to achieve something that you couldn't have achieved on your own?
Yes, this is Lisa. That first project, Future Ancestors, was so let me back up just a second. This vision that Lehua and I had of collaborating with different artists was inherently connected to being interested in those artists' practices. And Jocelyn's practice, prior to us working with her, had always included sort of physical transformations within the body. And she creates these just like absolutely stunning beings with a being. I don't know how else to say it. It's just the images were captivating. And so we knew that that was an aspect of what we wanted to include with this idea, within this idea of a future ancestor. Like, how could we in the present day occupy the role of an ancestor? And what would it mean to try to embody that together? What would we want to try to communicate, preserve, and how? So that was really the impetus for why our bodies became such a big part of it, because Jocelyn's practice always also includes a lot of performance and a lot of spoken word. And so we were trying to sort of work within those genres alongside our own Lehua and our respective sort of approaches to contemporary practice. And what ended up happening was that Jocelyn was able to invite another friend in, Brian, and I'll let Jocelyn speak to Brian in a little bit, who worked as the photographer on the project to try to capture what it meant or what it looked like for the three of us to interact in these transformed bodies. So the set of photographs that are the outcome of what we display or exhibit as future ancestors are really just artifacts of time spent together in this half imaginary, half real collaboration of existing as our future ancestors together. And so the storytelling that happened and what it meant to just sort of be really, for lack of a better word, completely bare with one another. Those were like necessary pre-existing conditions to making this actually work. And so it was just sort of like any barriers that I would have had, and I think this may be true for Lehua and Jocelyn as well, just kind of had to fall away if we were going to be able to be very, be our most true selves stepping into the work. And then to answer the second part of the question for myself, my practice has a lot of different sort of tendrils. I work independently a lot, but I also work collaboratively a lot. And I think that this project, more than anything else, it's really not about what we made or how we made it, so much as it was more this idea that we could build whatever we want if we just decide to do it and do it. And I mean, it seems so simple, but the art world is the art world and it does not leave you with that sensation. So that was sort of the real impact for me, and that resonates with me still today.
How did you decide on, because future ancestor is such a wonderful and strange term. How did you all three agree on, oh, this is the thing?
This is Lehua.
Lehua, yeah.
I will speak a little bit to this. So I think this is kind of dovetailing on the question that you just asked as well, which is, what can you achieve in collaboration that you can't achieve alone? And part of that is discovering within yourself in relationship to other creatives, like in that moment when you are coming up with the ideas, the excitement of creation. It's the what ifs, like, what if we did this? Ooh, what if we did this? I think that each of us is a mirror, or a prism, maybe is a better term, for the other person, the other two people. And what it allows us to do in conversation when we're thinking about what we're making is to reflect ideas onto each other, but then to have those ideas processed a little bit through, each brain, each set of lived experiences. And when it's happening, it's electric. It is 100%, it's that artist high that I get working in collaboration, where you're watching something unfold and you're not just teasing out the solutions in your own head. You're talking about it with other people who really understand you. So some of the things that we each bring to conversation when we're creating, we have our own strengths. And I would like to think that one of mine is coming up with titles for things. I really like naming things. I like the process of naming. And at some point, we were like, okay, what do we want this to be? We're each going to transform into this idea of, if our descendants were to look back at a photo album of us, right? What would they see? And they're going to be those photos that are taken in each family. You've seen pictures of your aunties, your uncles, your grandparents, and they're all posed mostly. And you can have a sense of what's going on maybe for that person in that day, but how much does that portrait say who they are? How they envision themselves to be? So that was the idea for creating ourselves into these larger than life portraits, was what would we pass on if we could say, hey, this is me? And one thing that became really important was thinking, what do we want to say to our descendants about queer familial intimacy? And that's where the portraits came from, is this idea of capturing how we see ourselves and how we see ourselves because of each other. because of that collaborative relationship. So the idea, the name Future Ancestors, is how do we encompass this idea of queerness, of familial intimacy that's not romantic intimacy, and how do we capture it and make that available for those who come after us.
And speaking of names, too, I don't want to overlook speaking about the name Art 25. How did you settle on Art 25? This idea of of leaving a legacy for the 25th century. Could you talk more about that?
Sure, this is Lehua. And Lisa, feel free to jump in. But Lisa and I in grad school used to watch the PBS show Art 21, Art in the 21st Century. And we were like, okay, this is it. This is an example of what art is in the 21st century. And this is what this show is saying. Like, these are contemporary minds and geniuses in the art world. And a lot of the shows are really wonderful. And the resources that it provide us to have that, lens to look out in was wonderful. But what was not reflected back at me was anyone who looked like me or identified as I do. I simply did not see CHamoru's making art on Art 21. I didn't see Pacific Islanders making art in Art 21. And I thought, well, if we're not represented in the 21st century, how would it be in the 25th century? Can I envision CHamoru's in the future making art? And so what is the limit of what I can imagine? And Art 25, Art in the 25th century, is a little bit of a kind of cheeky spoof on that. But I really do think it has the depth of meaning to actually be able to look forward and see what you're doing now that enables other Indigenous, Pacific Islander, Black artists making and creating into the future, several generations into the future.
Hmm. This is Lisa. I would add to though there's two things I'd love to add to that. When we used to watch Art 21, so for me there was representation. There was a fair amount of representation of Black identities within contemporary practice in Art 21. But there was also this missing piece of like, this is people kind of like at the top of their game. So this whole middle space, which is the working life of an artist to get there, was just glaringly absent. And that's not the goal of this. So this is not. I don't say this to offer a critique of Art 21 per se, but I'm just noting the absences. And so that was sort of the gaping thing. Like when we would look back on it, like, yeah, but how do you're looking at these people in these huge studios with all these assistants and all these things. And you're
Because you're
sitting
looking
here
for the
like,
how-to manual,
yeah,
sure.
like you're in grad school, like I
Yeah.
can't afford dinner, and like there's what is there's this gap between, and so sort of trying to understand the void within this very small microcosm, but then as you would apply that out, right, like expand that out, the capturing of the void, the thing that's not there, became important to us. And then I guess anecdotally, I could share, Lehua, if you want this excised from the record, please state. But one of the conversations that we would have would be like, what do you think it's going to be like when we're a they, when we're a them?
Oh,
Meaning,
when I become Mel Chin.
yeah, right. Like, it's like
Oh,
when people refer to you as like, well, they say, they insert.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
What
When
is
I
that?
become
Be
Mel
what you
Chin.
be. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of like, how do you get in the canon? Like, that's really the hilarious way of being like, how do you, what?
And will
When
I
they,
be a magnanimous ruler once I arrive? More importantly.
like, who is a Leo? And we should just state this for the record as well. Unanimous ruler, of course. So I mean, it's like this confluence of all these ideas, and I don't use I choose the word confluence really intentionally, that led us to these moments of like, what is it that we're missing? Oh yeah, we just do it ourselves. That's how it gets
Yeah.
done. You
You
see what I
just
mean?
make the
You just
That's
make
what's
it up.
missing. You want to
You
be
give
an
yourself
artist,
permission.
you just give yourself permission to make art
Yeah.
and make it how you want to make it with who you want to make it.
So it sounds also like working in collaboration as you do now, you do feel like you have more permission than you might have given yourself before.
Oh, yeah, because it's not relying on an institution. I mean, This is Lisa. The status quo, the pre-existing condition is that an institution is what validates your practice, right? That is the thing we're taking out of this. Like
But does
without the
Art25 still
institution,
not work with institutions, or
oh
it
no,
is
we'll
its
work
own?
with institutions, but we don't need institutions to work.
Mm. Say more
In
about that.
fact, well, for
This is
example,
Lehua.
yes,
Th-
Lehua, thank you, because
This
you
is
could hear.
Lehua. I'll speak to this in one way. So Art25 is self-funded. We don't sell our work, so it cannot be collected. The tangible material work that we make cannot overtly be collected by whoever has the money to buy it. We give our work to people in the community who want to steward it. We don't do commissioned work. We basically just give ourselves the freedom to conceptualize and make whatever we want for us. We are the target audience and all of our concerns that come with who we are as individuals. So for me, it's a CHamoru community, it's an indigenous community. For Lisa, it's a Black community. You know, those things also overlap, but we are making things and putting them into the world because we want to, and we do it how we want to. And it's not aligned with an institution that is funding us and therefore possibly dictating the size and scope or duration of what we do.
How did you decide on this particular framework?
This is Lehua. I'll say, and then I'll maybe hand it to Lisa and Jocelyn next. Yes, I think that we come to this with similar but also individual perspectives on like how did we arrive at what we want it to be. And this sounds really simple, perhaps because it is, but for me, the only rule to Art25 is for it to be enjoyable. Period. That's it. That is the goal. If it stops being enjoyable, then we're not doing something right. And the least enjoyable thing I can think of is getting intertwined with capitalism even more and being entrenched and enslaved to late stage capitalism for the one thing that brings me the most joy, which is connecting with people I love and being completely open and vulnerable to create and shape and make what comes from the depths of my being that has nothing to do with money whatsoever.
You said something beautiful about rather than selling your work, that you can choose to give it to community members to steward. Could you talk about that?
This is Lehua. And I will say that the idea of stewarding work is probably best described as being an ideal of my own cultural indigenous values, right? So if you're gifted something that someone has made, it's something that you cherish. It's not something that you part with easily or if ever. It's something that you are proud of. It's something that you would share with other people in your community. And so the idea of gifting our work to people in the community to steward is really about how can I share this most equitably in my community? How do I reach the people that I want this work to reach when those people are perhaps less likely to go to a gallery that the show might be hanging in? There's so many reasons that keep community and family apart from those of us who live in diaspora. And this is the most direct way that I can share what I'm doing with that community. And so I choose to give it to people who honor that honor the work that has gone into it. And they're not just going to put it on their wall, keep it forever, and one day it ends up in Goodwill. I hope. I mean, maybe. But it's all about who you choose to steward, right? But it really is about it meaning something more than just here's this gift that I'm giving to you, you know, as a present. There's a responsibility that comes with housing cultural I don't even want to say artifacts, but just housing cultural objects. And I think that when we make things, that's what the outcome tends to be, is a cultural object or a representation of ceremony or practice.
Could I offer just one thing here too? This is Lisa. And
Please.
this notion of the conundrum of collecting and finances in the context of Art 25, there's the obvious disconnect in how we weave these things together because it costs money to make work. It costs money to get together, it costs money to spend time. And I think one of the things that our projects, sort of shine a light on is this paradox. It's an inherent paradox. It's not one that we're able to resolve easily. To say that we're not going to sell our work still does not answer the question who paid for the work, right? And to me, that's where not being validated by attachment to an institution really matters. And between the three of us, the way that we navigate finances or projects is that we split everything equally. So if we need to travel to Honolulu, for example, the Who and I need to travel to Honolulu, but Jocelyn lives there, our flights might come to X amount of dollars. We'll still split that three ways. We're trying to create situations where there are no barriers for any of us, where one of us might have more money at this moment than the other, therefore can do more, et cetera, et cetera. It's challenging to foreground that as part of the project, but the project wouldn't exist without a mindset that honors that among the three of us. Like that is a
I
high value
appreciate you bringing that up because,
situation.
in a way, I otherwise I would feel like the graduate student watching Art 21 and wondering how do they do it.
Ava,
So I
Ava.
appreciate you talking about money because I do want to ask then how you do fund Art 25.
All kinds of ways. This is Lisa. I would say trade, also just our personal, we earn money, right? Like we live, we have
Right.
jobs, we earn money, we pay for ourselves. We can't wait for grants. We can't wait. It's not that we're opposed to applying for grants. It's not that we are, if an honorarium is offered as part of an invitation, we are delighted to accept it. We have a separate account that money gets held in so that we can use it toward future projects. But the idea that we're self-funded, I think, matters a lot because it really makes the stakes higher. Grant writing is also, for anybody that has done it, and I'm sure everybody in this conversation has, host included, it's a career unto itself. It does not serve the creative impetus that it's trying to support, and it only makes your work valid when you receive a grant. It's not that distant from capitalism. It just uses different language, right? So it's like, how well can you sell yourself and who's buying? While we live within the context of capitalism, we don't have to just mimic or mirror the way that institutions have functioned. And we are not an institution. We're a collective of artists collaborating across shared interests. Hmm.
I love, Lehua, you said a while back that really the goal of this is to be joyful in your work.
Hmm.
I would love for you, what advice would you have for an artist in any field who might be
Hmm.
hearing this, who really wants to maximize her joy when it feels like a grind?
Well, first of all, I think there's aspects to all making, whether it's like art you put on a wall or food that you put on a table, that can become tedious because it's, the ways that you choose the means to the end can be more or less tedious. So I think not, it's not separate from joy. I think, I think enjoying the tedium of doing things, even the mundane, is part of the art. From an indigenous CHamoru perspective, there's not necessarily a delineation between this type of art or this type of art. We just simply live a life where we create art through what we do to live. So every meal that's lovingly prepared is an artful creation. The fan that your auntie weaves from coconut leaf is a beautiful thing on the wall. if you decide to display it there, but it's made to keep you cool. I think that finding the joyfulness of life is about putting your love into it, whatever that be. I really like to talk outside of terms of, I mean, I can joke about becoming Mel Chin, but truthfully, I am Mel Chin in my own life. I've already achieved that success based on how I choose to live my life, right? It's not for this standard of notoriety. It's not for a standard of winning an award or receiving monetary gain or being famous. Like, it's the exact opposite of that. It's how do you imbue your daily life with care and love and find beauty in that? And when you put your hands to making something, you can call it art if you'd like, but I really do believe it's reflected in daily living. And if an art practice is part of your daily living, it's going to be joyful because you're choosing to show up and do it.
I mean, kind of. Sorry.
What is that?
It seems like Lisa might have another perspective to offer.
Lisa, is there a riposte coming?
No, it was something about like it being in your daily life and therefore being joyful. And I'm just literally looking at the pile of my daily life today, and I'm like, this is not joyful, but that's cool. That's cool. It's all part of the art. It's literally every part of the pile is an art related thing, but which it just made me laugh. I was like, wait a minute. I'm supposed to be happy right now. Sorry.
You always need a pessimist
I
on
digress. Yeah.
in your collaborative group. A pessimist is necessary because you need a foil for the optimist.
To my California listeners, I have good news for you. You have 2 opportunities to see future ancestors for yourself. The images are currently on display at the ARC Gallery, that's ARC Gallery in San Francisco through February 15th. And then the collection will be in Long Beach at the Pacific Island Ethnic Art Museum starting on February 22nd. As always, if you'd like to read a longer version of this interview, just go to uncsa.edu/artrestart. If you know of any change-making artists you think we should profile, please let me know. You can message me on Instagram at Piercarlo Talenti. Our theme music is by Shanghai Restoration Project. I'm Piercarlo Talenti, and on behalf of the Thomas S. Keenan Institute for the Arts at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts, thank you for listening.